Trace, your host of the Untold Miracles podcast, and today I am so excited to be talking to a sports legend, professional skateboarder, entrepreneur, actor, husband, father of four, and philanthropist whose foundation has given away over $10 million to skate parks in underprivileged communities across North America. He's a man of passion, perseverance, and pure heart. Please welcome to the podcast, the one and only Tony Hawk.
Hello, hello.
Before I start, Tony, I just want to acknowledge you for the miracles that you create for millions of kids across the country. You've used your platform to impact lives, and I'm just really excited for our conversation today.
Oh, thank you very much.
Your life has been pretty miraculous, and I want to start with your childhood. When you were 9 years old, your brother gave you a blue fiberglass skateboard. Tell me about that experience. Did you have any fear getting on the board for the first time, and what were your memories from that first day on a board?
I don't remember being afraid of it. I was kind of excited because I had just started surfing around that time, and that is exactly why my brother skated, because he was a surfer. And so it was sort of an extension of that motion. And then he and a couple buddies were skating in the driveway, and I just grabbed one of his old boards and asked if I could ride it. And it wasn't some great revelation. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it. I wasn't great at it. Like I basically went down the alleyway going straight and then ran into a fence and got splinters in my hand. And then because I didn't understand how to turn the board. And then I picked it up, turned it around, and went back. And from that point on, I used it as transportation. Which was cool because it really did speed things up. Like my commute to school was much faster after that. And then it wasn't until about 6 months later that I actually got to go to a skate park, and that is when I had my revelation because I saw people literally flying out of swimming pools, and I thought, I want to fly like that. That's what I want to do.
Well, when you were younger, you were kind of picked on and a little bit scrawnier. You were able to not let that stop you from pursuing your dream. How did you handle getting knocked down a few times on the skateboard and continuing to get back up?
I think it was just more I wanted to keep getting better, and I wasn't really worried about getting hurt along the way. I mean, it wasn't like I was throwing caution to the wind. And so I definitely had my share of injuries, but every time I just sort of learned to adapt and to learn from my mistakes. It was a journey, and you know, and for sure, skateboarding, if you want to get better at it, you're probably going to get hurt along the way, and that's not for everyone, and I respect that. But at some point, I wasn't really afraid to put my body in harm's way in order to learn new tricks. And there, you know, the risks were very calculated. It wasn't like I was just trying something and hoping for the best. I definitely had an idea of what to do and the foundation to make it happen. But the idea that something is possible is what kept driving me.
When you were 14 years old, you turned pro, and at 16, you were the best competitive skater in the world. And then by the time you were 25, you competed in 103 pro contests, and you'd won 73 of them, placing second in 19. Tell me what your personal mindset was at that time when you were achieving that success.
Well, it was very consumed by the competition schedule. So what was my life like? I mean, it was exciting and it was fun, but at the same time, it was very focused on doing just that. And I think in a lot of ways, I sort of lost some of my, and I don't want to say camaraderie, but some of the relationships along the way, like I kind of lost just because I was so focused on that I didn't really enjoy the bigger picture of the community we created. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably my only regret about those days. I mean, definitely, yes, I had a great track record, but at some point I should have kind of stopped to smell the roses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was a blast. It was all new. I mean, that was the fun thing about skating in those days, especially in the late 80s, is that it had never been established. Skating was not big, and suddenly it was on this rise of popularity, and we were riding that wave and getting all this opportunity that no one had ever had before. So we were just sort of winging it. It was a fun time. I think at some point we thought it wasn't ever going to end. And then it ended very, very abruptly.
Well, yeah, what's interesting is in 1991, it had a sudden quiet death. Yeah. But you were able to launch a skateboard company, Birdhouse Project, and it was a rough couple of years. I want you to share the biggest life lesson you learned going through those years where it was hard.
I think that probably the biggest lesson I learned was how much I truly love what I do, because suddenly I was doing it once again for no reward. And the only reward, the reward for me was what it gave me personally in terms of my self-confidence and my self-worth, but it wasn't financially rewarding. And I realized that I would rather do this for free or for nominal money than anything else in my life.
I know for 10 years you had a dream to land a 900, and on June 27th, 1999, you had a pretty miraculous day. I would love for you to share what that experience was like at the Pier 30 in San Francisco when you spun 2.5 times and hit a 900. Tell us about that day, what that felt like.
Probably the most exciting part about that day for me is that I did not have that planned. And a lot of people think that was my big master plan, was going into that event, was to make it. Like, I wanted to make that trick at any given time for those 10 years I was trying it. And I would have been excited, and I did it plenty of times on backyard ramps with no one watching and just hoping to make it so that I could just get the thing done. And so when I came to that event, it was a best trick format, and my best trick at the time was a varial 720, which is basically a double spin in the air while your board goes an extra 180 rotation. And I'd only made that one time in my life, but I thought, it's my best trick. So that was my goal going into the event. And then about halfway into the event, I made one, and then it was like, what do I do with the rest of this time? And so in my list of tricks of my sort of dream scenario, the next trick I ever wanted to accomplish was a 900. And so I thought, well, I'll just try some to show the crowd what it looks like. I mean, that really was my only intent, was like, here's what a 900 could be, because I've gotten very close in the past. And so I just thought, I'll run out the time trying this trick. And what happened was, around 4 or 5 tries into it, I realized that I was really consistent with my spin, which didn't ever happen before. And I was starting to see the landing more regularly. And then I thought, wow, I can actually maybe try to put this on the wall again. The last time I tried to do that, I broke my rib. And I thought, well, I don't mind breaking my rib here. Because
the world is watching you at this point, yes.
Yeah, if I'm ever going to put it all out there, it's here for sure. And so I started trying it, and I actually went to land one. And so by then, the time had run out.
And this is your 11th try, right?
I'm not sure, but what I did was I went to land it, and I had the same mistake with my weight distribution that I did when I broke my rib. And I fell forward, but I didn't get hurt. And at some point I thought, wow, maybe if I shift my weight the other direction while I'm spinning, I can kind of fix that problem. And then I did that, and I ended up falling backwards. And that was the moment where I thought, oh, this is really possible, because all I have to do is even out that balance.
Wow.
And on the next try, that's the one I made, and it was as shocking to me as everyone else, to be honest.
Well, do you think there were any miracles involved that you happened to hit it that day instead of the years and years prior where you were trying to master the landing?
Sure. I mean, I think that I had really given it my all many times, and for whatever reason in those scenarios, it just wasn't meant to be. And then I think it needed to be, I mean, just in terms of me personally, it needed to be something that was more spontaneous, that wasn't such a fixed plan that I had all this pressure. And I think the miracle of that was that it was that scenario, but it was on the biggest stage we'd ever seen, because it was this national televised event.
And this brought skating mainstream, and shortly after you had the Pro Skater game, which has had over $1 billion in sales. It was amazing what it did for the sport. Skateboarding is in the Olympics this year for the first time. I mean, I really feel like you should take the credit for all of this.
Well, I think that definitely that kicked it into high gear in terms of being recognizable to a more mainstream audience. I can't take all the credit, but there was definitely a perfect storm of that time where there was the X Games, yes, the best trick event happened, and then our video game was released a few months later, and that sort of propelled skateboarding into a different stratosphere of popularity. And also a lot of the sports like the X Games, like BMX riding and motocross. And so those sports all started to be just as popular as mainstream sports. And I would say that that's happened over the last 20 years. So when we come to this year where it is in the Olympics, it's not that surprising to me because at some point they can't ignore it anymore.
Right.
That these sports are truly what kids gravitate towards more so than, say, swimming.
Well, you really have changed the way people view skating, and you're introducing the next generation of kids to skating, both in the real world and digital.
Well, I'm always working on trying to raise awareness and funding for my foundation for public skate parks, and we focus on more financially challenged areas where we want to provide facilities for kids to go express themselves and have a sense of community if they choose to do a sport like skateboarding that they probably don't get much support for otherwise. And that's my way of trying to keep kids active. And, I mean, if you look at just obesity rates in the U.S., they're a little alarming, and it's the number one cause of cancer, and it's because kids are not getting active. And maybe if something speaks to them that's a little different, like skateboarding, I want to provide a facility for them to do so.
Did you found your foundation in 2002?
Yes.
So since then, you've given over $10 million. You've built over 600 skate parks and communities, like you mentioned. And I just think it's so miraculous because these kids would not otherwise have that opportunity. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing that you've created for millions and millions and millions of kids.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
I have a couple of quick fire questions for you before we end our podcast.
Okay.
You just did a bucket list item. You skated Baldy. What's next on your bucket list?
Good question. There is another structure that is similar to Baldy, but you have to take a boat to it, and you have to rappel down this big pipe. I guess if it was along those lines, that might be the next one, but I have not figured out how to make time for that one yet.
I read that you're still that 12-year-old kid trying to get to the top of a pool. What are you most passionate about right now that drives you to get to that top of the pool?
The idea that skateboarding is reaching a whole new generation and that I still get to participate in it and bear witness to all of this success and to be able to be a spokesperson for skateboarding is a huge honor. So that's what's inspiring me day to day.
I just saw your daughter. She dropped in on a skateboard. It was really cool to watch her embrace her fear and just do it. And it was fun to watch you as well. What was that moment like for you?
That was really, it was really fun to see. My daughter definitely, she has a few anxieties. And so for her to do something that's sort of out of her comfort zone that is something more physical is a really daunting idea. And so when we've been skating, and she's pretty conservative with her skating, but when I presented her that scenario and sort of showed her the ropes, I wasn't sure if she really wanted to commit to something like that. And so I sort of let it play out in real time, as opposed to trying to pressure her, because when she feels pressured, that's when she doesn't do it. Well,
you can watch it on your Instagram, and it's so cool to watch her. Like, you can just see the process that she's going through. And then she does it, and it was just like the best feeling. And I'm like, that, we can all have that feeling.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line is having that confidence, and also, you have all the information, you have the necessary foundation possibly for doing something like that. It's just a matter of taking that leap. And a lot of us don't want to take that leap. And it was really cool to see that she does have that in her. And I just saw the sense of pride she had when she did it, and it really affected us. It was really cool.
I want to know your favorite part of the movie, the Tony Hawk video game story.
I like the story that all the designers tell about the first time that I went to Activision, because I think that is a really telling part of the story, in that Activision, this big company, very corporate, is trying to sell me on a skating video game when I was already happy to be there. You know what I mean? Like there was this, the experience was very different on both sides, because I was super excited to get to do a video game, and they were super nervous to talk me into one.
I love that. I want to know the proudest moment of your life outside of your family.
Maybe this is a little bit shallow, but I was very proud to be featured on The Simpsons.
I love that.
I feel like there's such a gauge of pop culture and what's cool and what's not, and the idea that they centered a whole episode around me was such a huge honor.
I want to know the most recent miracle in your life.
Being able to do this at my age and still being considered relevant is a miracle to me. And I know that's a little bit lofty, but truly, when I was a teenager, you weren't even supposed to be skating when you're in your 20s. And then when it was in my 20s, people were like, you still skate? And then when I was in my 30s, it was like, wow, how do you do that for a living? And then when I was in my 40s, it was like, how could you still be skating at your age? And now it's like I've crossed over into the next realm of what's possible, and that's a miracle to me.
So who's the trailblazer in history who has shaped you the most?
Stacy Peralta, who was my first sort of team manager and coach. Mm-hmm. And he was a pro skater in his youth in the 70s. And he really showed me not just how to take what I do and to a new level, but also how to navigate being a professional.
What's the worst injury you've ever had?
I broke my pelvis in 2004. And it was... that was the hardest injury to come back from. How
long did it take you to get back on the board after that?
3 or 4 months to start skating again, but that was just minimal skating. And I would say it took me the better part of 8 or 9 months to actually skate to a level that I was satisfied with. What's the time in your life where you felt the most fear? It would have to be seeing my kids get hurt. When I saw my oldest son first get truly hurt, that was very scary to me, and I realized what I must have put my parents through. And your son is a professional as well? He is, yeah. So I have a child named Vinny who has cystic fibrosis. He's a big fan of yours, and he just wanted me to ask you a couple questions. So this is from Vinny. What was it like when you first tried skateboarding, and did you like it when they changed the board size from big to small? What was it like when I first tried? It was new and exciting, and I found a whole new sense of community that I fell in love with. And yeah, I think, the boards went from very small to very big quickly when I was young, and then they went back to sort of medium size. And I liked it when they went to medium size because they were easier to maneuver, and I could actually like flip them and spin them easier. Vinny also wanted to know what your reaction was when Ubisoft asked you to make a game. That was never soft, but I was very excited. I loved video games growing up, and I always thought that skateboarding would make a really cool video game. So when they asked me, I almost said yes immediately, but I waited to see what they were working on. And he wants to know if you liked the Tony Hawk Pro Skater when it came out, what your initial thoughts were. Very much. I was one of the biggest fans, yes. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Tony. And there's one last question that I have, and I asked this for all of my guests. If there were 3 miracles that you could create in the world today, what would that look like for you? Wow, 3 miracles. Well, one would be a safer, more tolerant place for children to live, a massive decrease in violence. I guess that's kind of the same. And skate parks everywhere. I mean, that might not be a miracle, but why not? Hey, I've heard some really interesting miracles over the years. Some people want a better golf game. I've heard it all, but I forgot to ask you, 17 years after you landed the 900, at 48 years old, you landed it again. Will you be landing it again anytime soon? I don't know. I never really make plans because, like I said, it works better when it's more spontaneous. If I'm skating and I feel like my body's in tune and things are rolling, maybe so. Never say never. I am excited to see that happen if it happens, and I just want to acknowledge you and thank you again for your time and all you're doing to create miracles in the world for millions of kids through your skate parks and all you do through the Tony Hawk Foundation, and thanks so much for talking about miracles with us. Oh, thank you very much.
I had cancer for the 4th time.
I have bipolar disorder.
I was hit by a car.
I have a rare disease.
I have Down syndrome.
We need care just like millions of kids.
Yet children's health care in the United States is severely underfunded.
I cannot wait.
We can't wait while the debate over a funding solution continues.
I need care now. For some of us, it's life or death.
Our children's hospitals are caring for us.
With more funding, they can ensure that we have the care we need.
Donate to your local children's hospital.
Don't wait.
Because we can't wait.
Join us to help us change kids' health.
To change the future.
Kids Can't Wait. Give to the Children's Hospital's COVID-19 Impact Fund today at kidscan'twait.org.